Now, we are going to discuss about initializing class instance. So, when we create a new instance of the class, right, there are two things that happens. First objects gets created and then objects gets initialized. So, we can see this, we can track this both like creating and initializing the phase, right, by using these two methods, new and the init method. Right, we'll talk about the new method later on, but first let's focus on the init method, right? So what the important thing to remember is when the init is the instance method. So when we like by the time this init method is called, the new object has already been created, right? So this new method automatically created, and then after init method gets called, right? Now init method functions defined in a class is now treated like a method which is bound to that specific instance. For example, consider this class over here. We have this init method defined. It takes self parameter, right? And now let's run this. Now when we call p equal to persons, when we run this, here what we're seeing, we are seeing that it has called this functions, init functions, right? So it is calling initializing a new person object. So we are printing this, and now we are also looking at this method, right? So here we are also looking at this object. So this self is the object at this object address we are seeing. Now we can also check what is the ID for P that we have created. We can see that this ID and this ID is matching, right? So because this init is the instance method, we can access the object state within the method. So we can manipulate the object state. That means here we have this init. Now we are passing self and the name, right? So here we're saying self dot name as name. This means that whenever the object will be passed, automatically it will also create the name attribute, right? So here when we do this, now when we create the person, now this Eric, this value we are passing, this value is passing for the init method. We are passing this Eric for the init method. So whatever the value we will pass in this parenthesis, that will be the attribute of the init method. Of course, not for the self, because it will automatically, so for the self, this p will be automatically get passed, right? So when we do this, this means that we have created a p object, right, with the name as an array. We can check that with the dict. We can see that. So what actually happens is that after the new instance, when we create a new instance, after this new instance gets created, right, Python automatically sees that it has the init method and it automatically call the init method, right? We can also do the same thing by using a different tactics. Like over here we have this person, we have defined a initialize function over here, again the same code, but again this initialize function will not automatically run. When we run this, when we create the object, we can check dict. It's empty now because it does not automatically run the initialize. We have to run it. But here, after creation of the object, we can see directly that it has the attribute and the value. But we can do this. We can call p.initialize, and now we can pass array. Now we can check dict. So this both steps, creating the object and initializing the attribute, both steps has been called in just one step using the init method, right? So just remember that by the time this init method gets called, right, the instance has already been created, right? And that after that this init function behave like a method for that object, right? This is how happens, right? Thank you very much.